Thank you for being here. Every year we take time to gather together as a church family to reflect upon the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. This is why we wear black. This is why we come and go in silence. This is why we leave without resolution. We wear black because we are mourning, we're grieving. We come and go in silence because this is a somber occasion. And we leave without resolution because we are waiting. So today we wait. We wait in the terrible reality of what has happened and the uncomfortable fear of what is to come. We wait like the disciples waited. And today we'll be waiting in 3 chapters. The first chapter, we remember in the waiting. The second chapter, we grieve in the waiting. And the third chapter, we stay in the waiting. And so waiting is the place that you're invited into right now.
Wait. To stay where one is or delay action until a particular time. A word used to indicate that one is eagerly impatient for something to happen. To wait is to assume a posture of vulnerability. It happens only when you've exhausted all of your options for making something happen and are forced to admit your own helplessness to force an outcome. It's draining. It's humbling. It's a feeling familiar to the people of God. Abraham waited 100 years to have a son. Isaac waited 40 years for a wife. Joseph waited in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Israel waited centuries in Egypt to be freed from slavery, and then many centuries more during the occupation for a Messiah. And on the very night in which that Messiah was betrayed, his disciples waited with him in the upper room. Tonight we join our spiritual forefathers, the followers of Jesus, as we assemble together in solemn remembrance, participating with the disciples in every stage of their shock, grief, and sorrow, as they sat at that final Passover meal in the upper room. They didn't know it would be their last meal with the living Christ, though they could feel there was something significant going on. And even if they had known all that was about to happen, they couldn't have stopped it or made it go faster. There was no way to skip through the 39 lashes, no option to speed up the excruciatingly slow and painful death on the cross, no fast-forwarding through the universal darkness that followed, no avoiding the heart in the throat heaviness of the stone rolling shut over the tomb. They were stuck. They had no choice but to be present to the reality before them and wait. Tonight we sit with them. We hear the words that they heard. We quiet our hearts and turn our attention to Jesus. We listen, we watch, and wait.
How did we get here? Where do we go now? The Savior of the world, now broken and bound. How do we get here? Wish we could turn back time before they sent you to die. Oh, did we get
Here in this point in time, we reflect on what happened that day. Every second that goes by is another chance to remember and replay the toil that he went through for you and me. He changed eternity on that tree. We try so hard to understand it, but can't quite grasp it, but don't want to blow past it, and that's why we're here again. Right here in this instance. Sometimes it feels distant, but lean in and don't resist it. So follow me there as we rewind time, the tick-tock of the clock back there on that road. As we step into that moment in history, though, viewer beware, 'cause it's a tale of misery. See, how did we get here? One moment you were dining, reclining, but now you're dying, hunched over in rags, dragged up that road with the heavy load on your back. Just one foot in front of the other, eyes blurry, face covered, smothered in blood. You suffered in love while they rubbed you in mud. See, it's hard to walk when you've been beaten and prod, struck with the rod, crowned with thorns and wounded and flogged. And now you're expected to trod step by step to your death, one stride at a time until you take your last breath. And now you finally arrive, but you're barely alive. And you made it to the end of the road. See, you made it to the place of the skull. Yeah, you made it to the finish line. Such a bitter victory, 'cause you made it to the place that you'll die.
How did we get here? Where do we go now? The Savior of the world, now broken and bound. How did we get here? Wish we could turn back time before they sent you to die. How did we get here?
Limbs stretched out as the sounds of heckles turn to sounds of metal. Every sound is a pound of the hammer, driving sharp nails into your flesh. Strike after strike until the nail pierces the tissue, rips through the wrist too, with no one to assist you. But it must continue. One hand done, it feels secure enough. Now on to the next one. Oh Father, this doesn't feel like love. Repeat, drive, nail, dig through the skin until it's all the way in. Now on to the feet. A little trickier than the arms. See, the feet don't lay as flat, so it's harder to get the nail through it. Just gotta put a little more muscle into it until it's all the way through. Every bone inside of each foot, they're all done. All the nails have struck wood. Your body is stuck good. It's time to raise you up like a flagpole. Lungs compressed, body a mess. Every laceration begins a stream to the ground. Every drop that falls out is a reminder of every sin being drowned. Like water, blood trickling down now. How did we get here? From head to toe flowing. Drip, drop, drip from every wound open. You start choking, eyes closing.
How did we get here? Where do we go now? The Savior of the world, now broken and bound. How did we get here? Wish we could turn back time to that place before they sent you to die. How did we get here?
Heart begins to slow. You're only moments away now. All you hear now is the thud inside your head. Your heart's trying to keep up, but it's been working too much, so it's slowly fading instead. Asphyxiation, suffocation, body shaking, all to save the generations. Amazing. You're at the end of this cup that couldn't be passed on. You begged and pleaded to avoid this mistreatment, but this was your purpose, your reason, now nearing its completion. This is how you got here. You knew this was the price, the only way to pay for the world's demise, for all of its disguised cries and lies, and now here you die. Hanging there in silence. It's finished. It's quiet now. The roaring quiets down, the violence mellows out as the blood is drying out. What just happened? How can this be? I thought you had the power to raise the dead. Why can't you save yourself instead? But it's over. The feeling of hopelessness sets in, the darkness steps in. I feel the bitter cold wind and ask, is this how it all ends? Your lifeless body now drapes in the air, crippled, shattered, and sheared. Oh God, My God, how did we get here?
So here we are in the upper room. Who are the people that we're here with? The people in this room are the people who gathered around Jesus, who slept on floors beside him, who walked with him through cities, who watched miracles all around this wondrous rabbi, who was showing them a God that they were now getting to know through his eyes. This rabbi, who they knew in their hearts could only be one thing, the one thing that they had been trained for from childhood, to wait for, to yearn for, to long for, that 2,000 years of family had been waiting for. This could only be the long-awaited Messiah. And these are also your dinner companions. These young, reckless men, they are trained in the art of waiting. And Jesus speaks to them in John 16:16. A little while, and you will see me no longer. And then again, a little while, and you will see me. The wait was supposed to be over, and yet their Messiah is asking them to wait longer. So they question this. They believe him to be the one who could bring them everlasting joy. So they're starting to see how this cannot be. The long-awaited expectation was a mighty war hero who could easily fight his way out of their present predicament. But he was not that. Or a mighty king who could command the people and bring order. But he was not that. He was a carpenter. How could he fulfill the prophecies of the Messiah? How could he become a king? How could he heal the brokenhearted? How could he fix the problem of sin and make a way to heaven? But their hearts held on to the waiting for the end of the story, the hope that there is a way and that Jesus could be that way. And so they wait, as we do, gathered at a table as we are now. Same God, same Spirit, at the table together, waiting. And regardless of what you've done or where you've been, you are invited to the table as well. Because Jesus does something that they did not expect in that moment. He shared with them the grain and drink offering. Now, this offering they would know as studious Jews is the offering that was made after victory. The grain was offered when the peace had been restored, and the wine was offered in rest. Rest from the weary business of war and fighting. But they are not in a season of rest, and yet their trusted teacher is offering them just this. Jesus was going to be the fulfillment of the promises their hearts dared to long for. Jesus gave them the assurance that celebration and rest are coming soon. So they took it in their hands, as we can do now. You'll find them in the seats in front of you. And they held each element, as you can do now, and pondered what this could possibly mean. So, let us hold the elements in our hands and wait while John sings over us in remembrance, and then we will receive the elements together. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, he took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it. And he said, "This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Let's eat together. In the same way also he took the cup after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me." And we drink. For as often as you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. So we wait and we stand and we sing. Come on.
You've been so, so good to me. You've been so, so good to me. Oh, to think where I would be if not for you, if not for you. You've been so, so good to me. You've been so, so good to me. Oh, to think where I would be if not for you, if not for you. You've been so, so good to me. You've been so, so good to me. Oh, to think where I would be if not for you, if not for you. 'Cause you've been so, so good to me. You've been so, so good to me. Oh, to think where I would be if not for you, if not for you.
Jesus Christ, I think upon your sacrifice. You became nothing, poured out to death. Many times I've wondered at your gift of life, and I'm in that place once again. I'm in that place once again. Jesus Christ, I think upon your sacrifice. You became nothing, poured out to death. Many times I've wondered at your gift of life, and I'm in that place once again. Oh, I'm in that place once again. Look to him. Once again I look upon the cross where you died. I'm humbled by your mercy, and I'm broken inside. Once again I thank you. Once again I pour out my heart. Now you are exalted to the highest place, King of the heavens, where one day I'll bow. But for now, I marvel at this saving grace, and I'm full of praise once again. Yes, I'm full of praise once again. One harvest, you sing.
so sinfully. My heart was dark, my eyes too blind to see, my pride destroying me. But your life sent for sin to die, and your blood shed to justify. Upon the cross, my ransom to afford, the sinner's great reward. Thank you, Jesus, for the cross. Thank you for the price you paid for us, giving up your life to save the lost. Thank you, Jesus, for the cross. The crown placed upon your head, the next meant for me instead. Your death became the only way to life. For me to live is Christ. Thank you, Jesus, for the cross. Thank you for the price you paid for us, giving up your life to save the lost. Thank you, Jesus, for the cross. Thank you, Jesus, for the cross. Thank you, Jesus, for the cross.
And who are the heavens as royal robes, and fashion the morning in the heavenly host? And who gave the word when all things were new? Oh God, it's you. It's you. And who fixed his heart firm upon man, and knowing the cost before he began? And who gave himself when all things were new? Oh God,
so great to worship with you. Why don't you go ahead and grab a seat as we continue in our time.
Oh, sacred head, now wounded, with grief and shame weighed down, now scornfully surrounded, with thorns thine only crown. How
To fully grasp the weight of the suffering and death of Jesus Christ, we will look at a historical and medical analysis of the scourging, torture, and crucifixion of Jesus. According to ancient accounts, the Roman flagrum was a whip composed of a short braided leather cord attached to a wooden handle and weighted at the ends with iron balls, pieces of metal, or bone. The victim of scourging would be stripped and tied to a post. Wielding the flagrum, the torturer would then slash diagonally across the victim's back, as high as the shoulders and as low as the backs of the knees. This device could be used with enough force to kill, and heavy strokes would deeply gorge the victim's back, peeling away layers of skin and muscle and chipping away at the bone. This could penetrate the lung tissue, causing a hole leading to a collapsed lung. However the scale, the Roman tortures and their comprehensive knowledge of the physical limits of the body were such that the victim would most often be mutilated, but not killed. That is to say, in practiced hands, an otherwise lethal device would be used to weaken the victim, to inflict intense pain and blood loss, but not to the extent that a following crucifixion would be useless. Strokes from the flagrum would raise deep welts across the affected regions. If the weights at the end of the leather cords were not sharpened, they would cause deep contusions, bruises that went down into the layers of the subcutaneous tissues and muscles. As the flogging continued, the strokes would begin leaving deep, stripe-like lacerations in the skin and underlying muscles, and likely would even have exposed bone, even ripping off pieces of skin and muscle. It's a brutal and disfiguring kind of punishment. Depending on the number of administered strokes, this flogging could bring about considerable blood loss and with it, circulatory shock. Crucifixion is lethal because it places the body into a position of extreme stress. As a result, depending on the victim's position and the whims of his executioners, the death could be brought about in a matter of minutes or over the course of several days. The actual cause of death likely varied depending upon the position of the crucified victim and the severity of the pre-crucifixion scourging. But contributing causes of death could have included asphyxiation or suffocation, blood loss, dehydration, stress-induced arrhythmias, that is, irregular heart rhythms of an extreme degree, hypovolemic shock, which is a form of potentially fatal low blood pressure, thrombotic endocarditis, which is a situation where stress causes blood clots to form on the aortic or mitral valves of the heart, and congestive heart failure with stress-induced accumulation of fluids in the pericardium, a condition called cardiac tamponade. Among the quickest of these contributing causes of death is asphyxiation, particularly if the victim's feet were allowed to hang free or if his legs were broken. He would not be able to push himself up in order to reach a position that would allow him to exhale properly. This leads to the buildup of carbon dioxide in the body, a condition called acidosis, which causes severe pain and muscle spasms before death. In the case of Jesus of Nazareth, it is highly probable that he died of severe heart trauma, such as congestive heart failure or fatal cardiac arrhythmia, with the blood and water accompanying the piercing of Jesus' side, indicative of a pathology of fluid filling the pericardial membrane surrounding the heart. I've described to you the depths of the physical pain that Jesus suffered. I don't share this expecting to surprise you or to make you feel nauseous. No, I share this because we can so easily forget the level of pain that Jesus chose to undergo for us. And when we see that more clearly, the appropriate response is grief. So today, in this moment of waiting, allow your heart to feel the grief, to feel the tension, and to feel the weight of what our sin has caused, Jesus Christ.
Look, he's covered in dirt. The blood of his mother is mixed with the earth. She's just a child who's throbbing in pain from the terror of birth by the light of a cave. Now they laid that small baby where creatures come eat like a meal for the swine who have no clue that he is still holding together the world that they see. They don't know just how low, but he has to go lower still.
Look now he's kneeling, he's washing their feet. They're all filthy fishermen, traitors and thieves. Now he's pouring his heart out. They're falling asleep,
But he has to go lower still. There is greater love to show. Hands to the plow. Further down now. The blood must flow.
oh, do you see just how low he has gone? Do you see it now? No one takes from him what he freely gives.
Beating his face, tear the skin off his back. Lower still, lower still. Strip off his clothes, make him crawl through the street. Lower still, lower still.
Hanging for me on a criminal street. Lower still, lower still. Bury his corpse in the earth like a seed, like a seed, like a seed. Lower still.
was a day we held our breath, felt the sting of bitter death, when all our hopes were buried in the grave. Our eyes awake, hearts were torn between our faith and what we knew before our King was buried in the grave. But grace was in the tension of everything we've lost, standing empty-handed, shattered by the cross. All we had was a promise like a thread, holding us, keeping us, oh, from fraying at the edge. All we knew was you said you'd come again, but you're buried and you're dead. So today we hold our breath and feel the sting of bitter death, and all our hopes are buried in the grave. Our eyes awake, our hearts are torn between our faith and what we know, and here our King is buried in the grave. Grace is in the tension of everything we've lost, standing empty-handed, shattered by the cross. All we have is a promise like a thread, holding us, keeping us, oh, from fraying at the edge. All we know was you said life would never end, but you're buried and you're dead.
It is
Her name is Mary. She's the mother of Jesus. And often I've wondered in that moment, as the stone was rolled in front of the tomb, what was it that was going through her mind? It's amazing what people say and what they think in the time of death. Maybe it was Psalm 13, verse 1 through 2. How long, O Lord? How long will you forget me? How long, O Lord, do I have to wait to see your face? How long will I have to console my own soul? How long? How long will my enemies be exalted above me? I don't know about you, but waiting is incredibly challenging. We're Americans. We don't like to wait for anything. It's uncomfortable. It's inconvenient. But for me, one of the things that's hard about waiting is letting go of the right to know the details. Maybe for you, you're like me, and one of the most challenging times in waiting is not the beginning and not the end, but it's the messy middle. It's the moment where you realize that you're powerless and all you can do is stand. It's interesting, in that moment, there's something that begins to fade and even, dare I say, die. It's hope. Proverbs 13, verse 12 says that hope deferred makes the heart sick. But one of the things that I love about it is the verse doesn't stop there. It says, desire is a tree of life. I think that more than just Jesus died on that day, I believe that hope died on that day. Have you been there? Have you ever lost hope? So why do we ask you to stay in the waiting? There's 3 quick reasons why. The first is waiting produces perseverance. But the second thing is that waiting produces trust. Something happens in the waiting where we begin to see God in a new way. And it leads us to the third reality, is that waiting breeds dependence. The fact that there's nothing that you and I have that can change our circumstance, but dependence on God. We've listened to the story and we've heard and we've read, but there's one person that is often left out. It's God the Father. God the Father was waiting for his son, Jesus. Earlier that day, he turned his face because his son represented your sin and my sin. He watched him brutally murdered and waited just like you and me. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21 says this, for our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that you and I could be the righteousness of God. Don't miss those first 3 words, for our sake. So this is why we wait. In a few moments, this service will end, and you'll know when the end is. It'll be abrupt. But I want to ask each and every one of you to walk out in silence as we stay in the waiting. We're going to sing a song over you. And on each exit, we'll have a little booklet for each of you to take home with you to spend the next 48 hours in the wait. Paul Tripp says it like this, that waiting is not about what I become or what's at the end of the wait, but it's about what and who I become in the wait. Because Jesus said, it is finished. But the story isn't over.
Until the darkness breaks, I will praise you, I will praise you, until the dry bones wake, until the mountains shake, until the darkness breaks. I will praise you, I will praise you. forget the things you've done. For I know that this is just the beginning. You're not finished yet. I know you're not finished yet until I see your promise come. God, with all I am, I'll keep believing you're not finished yet.